you need to become the digital mayor of your town.
Yeah.
What does that even mean?
I'll talk to people and they're like, dude, I see you on everything all the time.
I've got Albert, owner of Move to Sioux Falls, on the show today. He's a real estate agent crushing it with video content right now.
Talk a little bit about why you decided to invest time into making video content.
I was like, that is like my most like cringiest pet peeve.
He breaks down his video strategy, what works, what doesn't, and his advice at the end will resonate with a ton of you trying to make videos.
It wasn't great, right?
yeah.
But it was a starting point.
Oh, yeah.
That's kind of like my methodology.
He has a genuine love for the Sioux Falls area, and his videos reflect that, and you'll be shocked at how he tracks his content.
Have you found any like challenges that you faced when kind of making video content?
I got to get really good at this first.
Yep.
This is the Video Lab show where I have high-value conversations with experts in video marketing, video content, and video platforms. I'm your host, Caleb, and I've been helping businesses grow with video since 2012. I'm a video content creator and coach and founder of the Video Lab, a content studio located in downtown Sioux Falls, South Dakota. If you're a business or individual wanting to learn more about how video can help you create more awareness, build trust, and generate more sales, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out on any other future conversations. Here's my conversation with Albert on how he's winning with video. Maybe you can apply these things to your own workflow.
Thanks so much for being on the show, man.
Yeah, no problem.
How you been? How's business?
Business is good. It's a little bit slower with the market, you know, with the election and,
Election.
Thanksgiving and
At the time of recording this, the election just happened and everything. So, good times.
Yeah. And then like slow season is usually like dead season. No one wants to move or like figure out housing situation, whether it's Thanksgiving to December to New Year. So it's just like kind of a halted time.
All right.
So.
Explain for those who don't know you, explain who you are and what you do.
Yeah. Advertising the fifth.
Yeah.
I always like to put that out there.
I love it.
I run Move to Sioux Falls, which is a real estate company, but it's more like a real estate, digital education, and help you buy, sell, invest in single property homes. Right. Kind of got into it. My wife and I started a business previous called Sodex Days, and we were doing short-term rental out of our house from COVID.
Yeah.
Her parents were like, hey, we bought this bar. We have an apartment. Do you want to fix and flip it?
Oh, nice.
She was working at the chamber. A couple of people at the chamber kind of heard wind of this thing, and they just word of mouth marketing just kind of blew up the business.
Really?
Yeah. Paid off student loans, like car loans. Like I was like, oh, dude, I'm like full Dave Ramseying this thing. Like only got the mortgage
cash
left.
method. Did you go the cash method?
No, we did not go the cash method. So, so from there, we started that, and I was still working full time, and I was like, dude, I gotta get doing my own thing.
Yeah, right.
My wife shot down like 1,000 ideas for sure.
What were like two of those ideas? Do you remember? I want to hear what these ideas were shot down. I want to hear that.
Oh my goodness. I thought about doing like, so I floated one back in the day, and it was like ads on TV.
Okay.
And this was before like streaming got really big.
Yep.
And so I asked like Mayor Paul for advice on it before he became the mayor, and he was like, oh, that's awesome. But I was like, don't steal my idea. And he was like, you should always collaborate with people.
Yeah.
To see if your idea is like good. Because most people, it takes so much effort to like make an idea into an existence that they probably won't try to steal it. So that was probably one of them, which obviously that one took off. I didn't have the bandwidth or the knowledge at the time to like execute on that one for sure. I don't even know. I think I was I was working at a bank, MetaBank, which is now Pathword.
Yep.
I thought about something with like prepaid cards that I could do on my own, and my wife is like, "Dude, Meta could just like do that themselves."
Right.
So, those were like probably two that I was like, "Oh, these could be really good."
Yeah.
And then I was just like on a walk with her one day. I was like, "Hey, what if I got my real estate license and helped all our investors out?"
Yep.
No one's really doing like the math or the like financials behind short-term rentals. They do long-term.
Okay.
But like that short mid-term rental game, like no one was really calculating that stuff. So she was like, sure. And then I found out how hard it was to get your real estate license while you're working a job and doing a full-time business on the side.
Yeah, right.
So yeah, that's kind of how I got into like real estate, property management, and then real estate as like a realtor. And then I just kind of noticed like no one's doing great education on it, right?
Love that.
So I was like, how do I like differentiate myself? There's maybe like 1-2 deals on investments that you can do a year, just from finding the right investor who's gonna like have enough cash down now that interest rates have come up,
Right.
to cash flow the thing, or I go to the traditional route where I'm like cold calling a bunch of people, and I noticed in the market no one was doing video. There's like maybe 2 or 3 players in our market that do it. They do it really well. Shana Gedke, Amy Stockberger.
Yep.
There's another guy. His name is Chris, and one other dude. And the 2 people I just talked about, they were doing YouTube, kind of fell out. They just
Interesting.
Everyone like gets shiny object syndrome, where they're like, "Oh, I could do fix and flips," and then they're like, "I'll general contract that," and they're like, I can't do that at all.
Well, I mean, the whole rise of like HGTV, I feel like a lot of people went that route once like the boom of like what's Magnolia Farms or whatever. Who are they again?
Chuck and I can't remember her name.
This is bad TV right
here.
Yeah.
So,
but flipping houses and everything, people were like really getting into that.
Yeah, which you could make a good amount of money doing it.
Right.
But you just got to know what you're like really, really good at.
Yeah.
And so I think that's maybe why they fell off. They just got so much other things going on.
Yeah.
So I was like, hey, I could do more like education.
Yeah.
So I started writing a book.
Sweet.
It's being published in January. It's called Not Just Another Transaction.
Let's go.
And it's just to help first-time home buyers, sellers, investors, what the heck the whole process is. Because right now, you might get a cold call. You're like, I kind of trust this dude. Maybe I'll meet with him.
Right.
And then you get an hour to go over, and my book's 100 pages. And you'll be like, oh, in that hour, I'll like kind of regurgitate maybe that was 100 pages, and you're like, wow, this guy must know his stuff. I should sign with him, but I have no clue what I'm doing. So hopefully that book is like just like another tool for people out in the world to just utilize. And if they ask me a question, I'll be like, hey, this is the short answer. If you go to this chapter, you can like deep dive into it a little bit more. So
that's cool.
Yeah, that's kind of how I got into real estate, a little bit about myself. Wife, I already said. I got 2 kids, a third on the way.
Let's go.
So it's super busy. They're all under 3.
Oh, yeah.
3 and under.
Wow.
So
wow.
Yeah.
Mine are a little older, and it's still a handful. I'm not gonna lie. So there's you're in for it for a long time.
Yeah. Now they just say no better to you, right?
Yeah. That is true, yeah. But thankfully, my oldest is driving now, so
good.
He's able to pick up his brother from school and everything. So fantastic. Absolutely love it. Well, one of the reasons I wanted to have you on the show, Albert, is because you are crushing it with video content right now.
Well, I appreciate that.
Like you look on Instagram, you're getting into YouTube a little bit more.
Yep.
And your long form podcast that you're doing right now. I love seeing it. And I wanted to chat with you about your journey about doing video and this success story that I think that we're seeing. Now, you've actually had a few viral moments, I feel like, on Instagram.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So can you like talk a little bit about why you decided to invest time into making video content?
Yeah. Yeah. It kind of goes back to like before, like, and I'll preface this, like, I grew up in New Jersey.
Okay.
My dad was a graphic designer, very into like the Apples. I like learned on a like one of the like old MacBooks. Was just always interested in technology.
Sweet.
Actually like got a PSP, would get Wi-Fi from like a high school across the street before they had like bandwidth parameters. And was just like, wow, this is cool.
Yeah.
This is different. And kind of like grew up like just learning all of the little things that you need to, right? Like I remember when Snapchat came out in like sophomore year of college.
All right. Yeah.
So it was just like cool that I got to like evolve with the changing technology.
Yeah.
And then I just like, I keep hearing like Gary V and like just other players in the space that are like, you need to become the digital mayor of your town.
Yeah.
And so back maybe a year and a half ago, like right when I was getting into real estate, the real estate association president was like, hey, we're going to build on our website to be way better. Nice. Right. And I just had this kind of light bulb moment of like, hey, instead of like clients that connect with you and then they're like, oh, I have the keys to the whole real estate association now. It's like, why don't I create that website first at like first point of entry to get those resources? And then I was like, okay, on my website, I should have like a YouTube channel because not everyone's an auditory learner. They're not just a visual. They're not a kinesthetic learner. Like you got to kind of have all three of them.
Yeah, right.
And so I didn't want to be one-dimensional, kind of like in football terms. That like if you can pass, that's awesome, but you need to also run.
Got to have the run game.
Yeah. So that's kind of why I was at an early age very interested in technology, doing video. And then just like it was a beast though. Like and most people they just like try to do it all. Right. And I started by having like YouTube channel like started like my business was called The Fifth Realty. It was kind of like it wasn't great, right? But it was a starting point.
Oh yeah, 100%. At least you were starting doing it, right?
Yeah, and I have to give kudos to this guy. His name is Zacchaeus Shaw, lender. I told him about the website idea, and then he was like, "Hey, someone has like a website called movetosd.com." And then I was like, "Man, I should like." He was like, "You should try like move to the city." And then I was like, "Oh, move to Sioux Falls." So that's kind of why I deviated the name into Move to Sioux Falls.
Sweet.
And so like really appreciate the guy like helping me out, like brainstorming kind of things. And then it just kind of took off from there where I was like, I'm going to hone in on Instagram. I'm pretty good at that. You know, when you first set up the channel, they try to like boost your algorithm right away.
Totally.
And
feel
like,
good about yourself.
Yeah. So I had this one reel that got like over 1 million views right away. And I was like, oh, I know what I'm doing. And then all of a sudden it like teeters off, right?
Yep, totally.
And you
get you all excited. And
yeah. And then you just get into like, okay, how do I get this to sync up to Facebook and then like have both of those kind of going? So I kind of veered away from YouTube right away and was like, I got to get really good at this first. Whether it's like scheduling, posting content, learning about hashtags, even though they don't really matter that much anymore. Right. Like what are the advanced settings, all of that stuff on just one platform. And then you move over to, you know, LinkedIn and YouTube and X and like there's so many out there. So you can't get them all.
Right.
And you can't master them all if you try to take them all on at once. So once I got really, really good at content scheduling, understanding like there are like so many like social tools that you can connect. Whereas like, oh, I'm just going to have like a social planner, right? And they don't work well because you have to have a business account, which that business account doesn't give you trending audio. So then you're like, oh, I am not going to use that because I need a creator account to get all the insights, but also the trending audios. So that's kind of like what was phase one.
Right.
And then phase two was, you know, talking with Dennis, 605 Video Company, kind of giving them like, hey, how do I become the digital mayor of the town? I think it's more of like, why do you want to be here in this community? Who has a voice here? Not, hey, here's a great home.
Totally.
You should buy it because it looks really cool. Like
here's a video tour.
Exactly. So I kind of got like cringed. I was like, all like, these are kind of cringy, just like doing video tours. So, and I like to zig where a lot of people zag.
Right. Yeah.
You know, Matt Paulson, who's like big in Market Beat, he told me with the Sodex Day side, he was like, get as many rentals as you can.
Oh, yeah.
And I was like, I think I'm going to zag the other way or zig the other way because they're about experiences.
Right.
So, like, here's an example. You'll go to someone will rent a short-term rental and they'll go, hey, we're doing Christmas in July. And it was like for a very sad reason. Their like sister was like passing away from cancer. They're like, it's going to be her last Christmas. Can you like, and then that kind of is the light bulb of like, all right, we got to like deck this whole thing out in Christmas in July.
Make it an experience.
And so that could take like a whole day's worth of your time, right? Totally. On one rental. Well, if I have 100 of these things and I get like 4 or 5 of those requests, like every couple weeks, there's no way that's sustainable.
Totally.
So that's kind of why we're just kind of stuck at that 20. We're in like 25 managed rentals right now. I don't think the number would ever exceed like 30 to 40.
Okay.
And now it just comes down to like picking and choosing. Like, is it the right property? Is it the right owner? So, yeah. So I like to zig where I zag. Sorry, I'm doing this whole weave about like why I got into like longer form content.
Yep.
I just found that there wasn't a lot out there for Sioux Falls and like the country in general.
Yeah,
so
right.
Yeah,
You're filling that gap.
Yeah. So that's
sweet.
that's kind of why like I wanted to do long form, which
and here's the thing about those video podcasts that you're doing. I mean, they're meaningful conversations, right?
Yeah.
Like you get to hear a bunch of stories. First of all, you get to hear why people are in this community, but just those meaningful conversations, a lot of people are going to relate to those. Do you have any stories of like maybe somebody watching one of your video podcasts or maybe even a video on Instagram or something and then like come to you and be like, hey, I saw you and like this was really cool.
Yeah, something that like I never thought was going to happen is, and this is a little bit of a longer story too, and this is why I love long form content because you can just talk forever.
Totally.
But I have these like kind of lead channels, right? Where I'm like, oh, I'm really going to get into like social media as a lead channel. And then I'm going to have like business relationships through like podcast network market where I get a kind of a lead channel, right? And then like my last one was this lady, Kelly at Fairway Mortgage. She was like, hey, the most amount of baby boomers are going to be retiring. You should look at downsizing as like a opportunity, right? And so
interesting.
I connect with older folks pretty well.
Yeah. Awesome.
And so I never thought though, like that would be my audience or my like biggest fans are like older people at my church. They'll like walk up to me and they're like, hey, saw your last episode with like the Lifelight CEO. I never knew X, Y, or Z.
Yeah.
And it's been awesome to just like learn about all these little things. So it's been really cool to have like raving old people fans.
Yeah. That's
but
awesome.
like they're older and you wouldn't expect them to be on YouTube or these long form podcasts to like listen to. So it's been really cool.
So you are kind of finding an audience.
Yeah.
Is that kind of
For
what you're
sure.
saying? You're like finding an audience. How important do you like when you're making this video content, are you keeping that audience kind of in mind as you're making this, or like how much does that affect some of the content that you're making?
Yeah. So I think Dennis and I always think of Dennis as like my Jamie to Joe Rogan, right? Like, hopefully we can like start like, hey, let's like look up online if we're right about this stuff, just to kind of fact check us. At first, like our audience would have been like, hey, I'm just trying to get like 25 to 38-year-olds who are like looking to buy their first or second house, but they like didn't know what they were doing, and like, or like having them come from another state, right? And then it just kind of morphed into its own, like, hey, like people all over are just asking me. So I wouldn't say like there's a rhyme or reason right now that the audience is like that fine tuned yet. But we're like starting to see with like season 1 kind of wrapping up in the next couple of weeks here. I think it's like 6 more episodes. We'll have season 1 done. And then we're going to take a little break. But I do believe like there'll be like a geared towards audience, and right now it's just interviews, right? I think it'll start playlisting out into like interviews about just like city and then interviews about like suburbs, and so like we're just still kind of fine-tuning that.
Absolutely.
We're only 6 months in.
Well,
so
I mean, the first step is getting it done. The second step is like, okay, now let's figure this out.
Yeah.
That's kind of how I operate too. Like I'm like, let's do this and I'm going to figure it out as I go. Now, okay, so you're doing like a bunch of short form content like on Instagram and TikTok. Are you doing TikTok?
So I have TikTok. I don't post as much as I should. I kind of got scared away from the whole it's Chinese owned. They're thinking about shutting it down. And so I wasn't like big on it.
Gotcha.
And someone asked me, hey, why aren't you getting into TikTok? I think it was Gabe Dannenbring. He's very big on TikTok. He was on Netflix. He's a school teacher here in Sioux Falls.
Yeah. I know who you're talking about.
And so he was big on it. And then I was like, I kind of just haven't made I could just get right into it if I wanted to.
Right.
I just kind of want to see how things play out on a national scale. Of if it gets shut down, it's like, I don't want to put a bunch of work into it. And I think that's the big thing a lot of creators don't think about is like, you don't want to just be beholden to a platform because they could just shut you down at any moment.
100%.
So
yes, preach.
Yeah.
Preach.
So I don't think Google will be shut down anytime soon. So I think that's why I was like, hey, I got to get on the YouTube train right after Instagram and Facebook.
Yeah. Love it. So Instagram, Facebook, Reels.
Yeah.
You're doing a bunch of that. Can you just walk us through like what is your workflow for something like that? So like are you batch shooting content, or is it kind of more sporadic? Like, oh, I have a video idea, I'm just going to do it right now, like that type of thing. Is there any type of workflow that you have when it comes to some of that, especially the short form, Reels? Not necessarily the video podcast,
For sure.
but that short form stuff. Is there any workflow?
Yeah. So like I kind of talked about with like social planners, like connecting things, it wasn't working, right?
Yep.
So what I did is I just got out my spreadsheet and I was like, I'm going to make a spreadsheet for every month.
Love it.
And at first it was like very nuanced, right? And I talked with Tommy Tran a little bit. He's another creator here in Sioux Falls.
Yep.
And he was like, dude, you should just try to figure out like what sticks, right?
Yeah.
Like just try different ideas. So I have like category types for each day.
Okay.
And then I would have the caption, utilize ChatGPT a lot in the beginning stages.
Yeah.
Now they're more like, give me a rough draft and then I'm going to fine tune it from there.
Yep.
And then the trending audio is like in that spreadsheet as well.
Nice. So you're tracking the audio and everything when you do it. Yeah.
Yep. And so like if something like hits really good, so I was doing it by myself.
Yep.
And then I was shooting everything, with an iPhone.
Yeah.
And just trying to get out there.
Yeah.
And then kind of just saw that I was like, I need help. So I did a couple of college talks around local colleges and went back to my alma mater, Dort, and got a social media intern who now is like working for me part-time.
Yeah, sweet.
So I'll basically, if I'm on social media, it's either like to like find something on Facebook Marketplace or like find trending audios or ideas. And then I'll just like direct message her. Hey, this is a really good audio. We should try to add it in this week to the spreadsheet. And then we, most of the time, like right now, we've kind of morphed into, instead of doing like me like shooting all the time once a month for the whole month with all the ideas, it'll turn into like this last couple months I have moved to like Wednesday we talk about the city. So anything in Sioux Falls, we got a guy who did drone shots all across the city.
Yeah, sweet.
And then we collaborate with other Instagram creators to say, hey, you have some really good content. We'd love to add it to our video to say like, oh, hey, there's 72 parks. Can we like work with the parks division and people around who have like shot on the parks and just ask them, hey, is this okay?
Yep.
Then we did one about the schools, and then we'll bake in like, hey, we're doing, like I said, we had the Lifelight CEO. So we'll like do Thursdays and Tuesdays promoting the episode, and then it drops on Fridays for the long form. And then I don't know why, but everyone likes like funny videos.
Yeah.
They don't necessarily educate or tell people things. So we were like strictly doing like funny things on Fridays, like Friday funnies.
Yep.
And then we moved it into more of like funnies for like Sioux Falls, South Dakota geared, right? So that's kind of like the trajectory we're on, where we post every day. And then I think farther from that, if like, I start selling like 2-3 homes a year, I'll probably take this social media person full time if I can.
Gotcha, yeah.
And what we'll probably do is move more into like getting into more TikTok. If TikTok doesn't get shut down, we'll go into more YouTube shorts, because we have, and I don't like doing this, is like across platforms, you want to have like different content, caption wise and like video wise.
Right.
And so we've gotten down the caption wise. We haven't gotten down the video wise yet.
Yep.
Where we need to clip more out of the long form content and put it out there for people. We just haven't gotten to that point yet. But that's kind of like my methodology. Is we have the spreadsheet. I don't even set it up anymore. I told my social media person, like, hey, I like taught her. It took like a year and a half, 2 years. So like for anyone listening or watching, like it takes time to train people on doing this stuff. Yeah, be very patient. So,
oh man, so that's great. You're using a spreadsheet.
Yes,
like old school. Let's just hammer it in. I love it. Oh man, I wish I was that organized, honestly, personally. Okay, so what types of have you noticed, like what types of videos are working? You said like kind of funny videos, people like that. Like what are some other ones that you've kind of noticed?
So it takes a little bit of time, but like what just kind of like I just saw this yesterday. We did a video about downtown Sioux Falls, right? Or we did a video about parks or schools or and they weren't kind of going well yet. But then yesterday we just had like 2,500 people view it.
Sweet.
And I was like, oh, that's a barometer.
Yep.
So like my next thing really is we're gonna, and this is all just like fluid usually because you're like, oh, I'm kind of brainstorming on the fly.
Yeah, totally.
But Gary Vee kind of talked about, he had this like huge conference with like electricians and like contract workers, right?
Yep.
Or contractor workers. And he was like, if you go super old school where you get them like a jersey or like he had this wine business and he sent out this jersey, went super old school where he mailed something to a guy. Then he got a deal where this guy's friend bought like thousands and thousands of dollars worth of wine, right? There's that one side. And then he brings it back to this other side where it's like you got to be on either two extremes. You can't be like kind of in the middle. And the other extreme was he was like, take out your phone and say why you shouldn't hire me and then do a bunch of work. So I just released a reel last week. It got almost 1,000 views where it was like, why you shouldn't hire me? Because I'm writing a book that like educates people and they can use their own other realtors, right? And so I'm going to try to like start trying to dabble in that. And I think back to like my first stages of like when Tommy was like advising me, like, see what sticks. It's almost like calculated things that stick now. And then once the, if that why you shouldn't hire me takes off, this why the things about the town, those kind of like start jumping off. That's when I'm gonna get into more paid ads.
Gotcha. Yeah.
I don't do any paid ads right now.
Nice. Wow.
So it's really nice. Cause I'll talk to people and they're like, dude, I see you on everything all the time.
Isn't it crazy? Well, you're consistent, right? So you're always showing up. Like, and so people are going to start recognizing that. That's what I like about some of this like organic video content, even if it's shot with your phone, right? Like you are showing up all the time.
Yeah.
Which is great.
And that kind of leads me into, I'm actually taking like a week break from stories. I think stories are where you like show your personal side.
Totally. Yep.
And then like your content is like for gauge to your audience and gauge to your industry, with the, the grid and everything. So that would be my 2 cents on if you're going to get into it. And my biggest pet peeve is when someone goes, hey, like, I'll put Berkshire Hathaway. They're like, hey, we got like pre-canned like images for you. You should use them. And then every single realtor at that like company is doing the same thing. I was like, that is like my most like cringiest pet peeve. Like, be creative, have different content than everyone, or like it doesn't like show that you're different at all. Right. Yeah.
Interesting. Now, is there like, let's get into maybe the analytical side of it. Are there like certain things that you watch for, like as far as analytics of your videos go? Like maybe it's interactions or saves or I mean views is something. Like views is something to watch just to kind of gauge the temperature of the videos. Is there anything in particular that you pay attention to?
For sure. I look at saves and shares a lot.
Okay.
Like, if I get,
especially on Instagram.
Yes, for sure. If I get, let's say 2 or 3 right away out of the gates of a share or a save, I'm like, this video is going to do well. It's going to do over 1,000 views for sure. And the market that we're in is small enough that it's like, oh, hey, this is going to get out. The other thing I look at is like followers to non-followers. So that last video I just posted yesterday, it got 90% of them were non-followers.
Okay.
So then I was like, hey, this is going to do well because people are already sharing it and saving it.
Yeah.
And it's not part of my audience.
Right.
Right. So those are kind of like my barometers. I'm hoping to get more engagement. Like, I haven't found the analytical tool of like, hey, if you get this many shares or this many views or, you know, I haven't figured out how to get people to comment more.
Yeah, gotcha.
And I've gone into, you know, like automation processes, like with ManyChat, where it's like, hey, comment, move to Sioux Falls or Sioux Falls bound or something like that.
Here's a link.
Here's a link to get like a free guide of why Sioux Falls is awesome. So I've like dabbled in that.
Yeah.
I'm just not like there yet on the engagement side. I think that's like kind of my next piece of the puzzle. And I think getting more out there through paid ads, just a little bit, I think will help with that.
That'll help kind of drive that traffic a little bit
Exactly.
more.
Yeah.
Are there like certain call to actions that you're putting in your videos when you know, thinking back? Is there like certain call to actions that are working better than others?
Yeah. So a lot of, and this was probably like 3 months ago. It's kind of slowed down. But what was working really nice is like, if you have a video that's like 3 seconds long, people will watch it and rewatch it because they're like, okay, what did he put in the text?
Yeah.
And then if you like just put like read caption below or like comment something below, like those work really well to engage them. Yeah, I would say those are like your two, like, and they're super easy, but like people aren't good at being consistent.
Right.
So like showing up every day and like my wife always is like, man, like you always put these deadlines on yourself. And I'm like, I know, but it helps you be more consistent throughout the whole like makeup of like what you're doing for video content.
Consistency is huge.
Yeah.
Like it just constantly showing up. So when we think about this, like, have you found any like challenges that you faced when kind of making video content on a regular basis, like on a consistent basis? Like, what are some of the challenges that you're facing? And it could be like short form, or it could be with the podcast, or any of the video content that you're making. What are some of those challenges that you faced?
Yeah, and I might allude to this. I think I got into like working out at like a very young age.
Yeah.
And I bring that up because like that's one of the hardest things you have to do for the day.
Right.
And so like when I became a CrossFit coach for a little while, was here, like you had to be consistent every day if you were gonna like go to a competition.
Gotcha.
And you'd be like, oh, I don't want to do like hang cleans today or jump rope today.
I want to do that any day.
Yeah, exactly. So like that was like, oh, shooting a video, that should be like way easier. I think the challenges are when you show up and you're like, oh, I really like that idea, but I'm not great at editing it, right? And editing takes a while to kind of get down.
Totally.
I've probably watched hundreds of videos on like how to edit one thing.
Right.
So like an easy example would be when you're kind of like flipping off clothes to like kind of cycle through them, where you're like, here's an idea. You are showing up to a showing with your buyer, right? Day one. And then you're like prim, proper. And then like after 4 houses, it like progresses into like less, professional clothing. And then, so like those are the challenges where you're like, hey, I'm going to shoot this video. I'm going to have to change my clothes in and out all the time. It's easier for me because I have the short-term rentals where I'm like, oh, hey,
just pop in.
3 of these are like empty. I'm going to pop in. So it's a different house. So people are like, oh, how is he going to different houses all the time? So that's been like a challenge that I've gotten out of the way.
Gotcha.
And then the challenges would be like editing, like Dennis and I talk about, and he does, and I don't know if I said this, but he does all of our like long form video shoots.
605 Video Company.
Yep.
Dennis and Kate.
They're great.
Love them.
Love them.
Yep.
And he has said like anytime we shoot for an hour, he needs 4 hours to edit.
Yeah.
So when you think about if I'm shooting right in the beginning, I was shooting a month at a time every day, and they're 30-second videos. Well, you need 1.5 to 2 minutes. But then I would say it almost like 5Xs your time because you have to learn as well with that editing. So you might spend like 10, 20 minutes on each 30. So 20 minutes by 30 videos. That's almost like a 2 or 3 days worth of work after you've shot and everything.
Do you feel like that was worth it going through that?
Oh, 100%.
100%?
Yeah.
Now, as far as like being worth it, like, do you feel like if you could just like jump on the camera right now and just record something yourself, like how confident are you doing that?
Oh, very confident.
Like,
I couldn't lip sync anything before. Like you see a lot of people who are like doing something trendy and they lip sync an audio or something. Yeah. I could not do that. I would have to like 1x speed it so like it would sync up correctly. Yeah. Now it's like I'm just barely off. Okay. So then you like 0.1 speed it up and it looks normal still. Okay. So I'm like probably 90% of the videos. Now, if you ask me to do like a Jim Carrey bit from like Dumb and Dumber and it's like 4 minutes long, no way. Like
you're not going to do that for us?
No, there's some very talented people that can do that. There's no way I would do it.
Are you doing any videos of like visiting local restaurants and, maybe shops and things and kind of like promoting things in the community a little bit?
Yeah.
What's that look like for you?
Yeah. So, I try to go to different restaurants, like Queen City Bakery is one that I know you go on Fridays. You love like working there.
Yep.
I will try to do a reel of that place.
Yeah.
I think in the future, like I'm gonna have Sanaz Aborik. She's awesome chef.
Yeah. Have her on the show?
Yeah, I want to have her on a show. I want to start doing like, hey, what's your favorite dish, and have it on the show to promote it that way.
Yeah.
So cool. I think that's kind of where I'll be like headed towards.
Yeah.
And then short form content will be like I'm not in the shots. Because I just found that if I'm always in the shots, it's almost like the focus is on me and not the community.
Right. Yep.
So that's kind of why I'm trying to like be more like third person person. Cool. And then those stories that I talked about is more of the personal connection.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Have you done any like selfie style videos of like in the car? We're talking in the car.
Yeah,
those are so popular right now.
Yeah,
like they're killing it.
I have done it a couple of times. Most people they'll like DM me and they'll be like, "Hey, stop like videoing while driving." Or like, "Hey, I heard the beeping. Get your seatbelt on." Or like, so they get tricky for sure. I haven't done them as much anymore, but I probably will get back into. But for sure, stories. I'll selfie myself for sure.
Like I see people doing that, and it's just like those types of videos are killing it.
Yeah,
it's just like sitting in your car, and I mean it's a nice like quiet spot, right?
Yeah,
like quiet spot, fairly good audio as long as you're not driving and things. Sure.
Most agents are like on their way to the next showing, or they're waiting, or they're running late, so they're like being So they're doing pretty good.
Yeah. Okay, so let's talk about maybe some advice that you have for somebody that is kind of looking at maybe making video content to help kind of grow their business or their personal brand or their influence. Do you have any advice that you would give to them as far as when it comes to just making content and just going for it? I feel like that's kind of what you did. You just went for it.
Yeah, I did. It's not flashy in the beginning for sure.
Yeah, and you weren't like necessarily overthinking everything, right?
No.
Right?
I just picking people's brains in the beginning and like, hey, what's gonna work? And they're like, dude, just get out there.
Yeah.
Like, who cares? Now, being a realtor, you kind of have to be careful with like what you're saying.
There's probably like what is it called?
There's a code of ethics that we have to follow for sure.
Okay.
And so like we're held
compliance.
To like,
compliance was what I was looking for. That's the word.
Compliance. Oh, don't get me started. When I was at the bank, I would be like, I cannot stand compliance. So, just getting out there, being okay with you're gonna be bad at it if you're not into it already, or you're not doing something already that you've done before, you're not going to be great at it. Now, like people that are younger than me, like 20s to 25, they have a leg up because they kind of like were born into the whole
100%.
Hey, let's do video.
my 13-year-old is a better editor than me.
Whoa.
Yeah. Crazy.
That's crazy. And so I'm just trying to like find the words right now, but I think it's getting out there, picking one platform to like really hone in on, and then just like getting ideas, and it could just be the whole R&D where you just rip off and duplicate a little bit, where you're like, oh, I really like, I found this thing the other day, and I sent myself a message and said, hey, this is funny, use it like in a couple of weeks. And love just that. Like making media as more of like your job instead of like being a consumer of it, be a creator of it.
Love it. Yep.
The other thing I would say is like read a lot of books. A lot of people are like, dude, I don't read. And I was like, my mom had tried to like, she's got her doctorate, 2 masters, and like she was trying to get me to read forever.
Yeah.
And then this like light bulb moment went off.
Now you're writing a book.
Yeah, now I'm writing a book, right? So this light bulb moment went off where you're just like, hey, I need more ideas. How do I get them? And you need like thought-provoking things to think about. Yeah. Whereas social media, I think, is just like they're trying to sell you something.
Totally.
They're, like same with me, right? Yep. I'm trying to sell Sioux Falls is the best city to move to. Here's why.
Yep.
Right. But like having things that like are thought-provoking to go to that idea, it's happening every time, right? But when you just consume that content, you're like, hey, people are just trying to sell me every time.
Yep.
When you're reading books, they're trying to convey what's kind of going on in the world. So there's this book I'm reading right now. It's called Think Again. And it's talks about like getting a different perspective. So the first chapter talks about these firefighters who are fighting wildfires back in like the 70s. I think it's the 70s. Don't quote me on it. Yeah. I need a Jamie in here to be like, hey, is this right?
Fact check that.
But the guy was like, the leader of the group was like, hey, we're not going to make it to the top of the mountain to outrun this wildfire. That's like what we've been taught. We need to dig a hole and then like cover ourselves to like.
So the fire goes over them?
So the fire, like you like make a big hole, like a radius, right? Okay. And then you have like a hole and you put like your, I guess they have like this special like coat or something that they hide in. He was the only one of 2 survivors out of like the whole like regiment to like make it. And it was because one of the guys was fast enough, all the others weren't, and then him. And then he was just like, well, I wasn't taught this, but I was just thinking in a different way.
Yeah.
And I don't think like social media is doing that because it's such short form content, right? Now, you get on Joe Rogan or a long form content episode, that might be different, right?
Totally.
But as you're getting in with advice that I'm trying to give to you, is like read books, get good at a platform, and then just get out there and like see what works. Yeah. See like, hey, this video did really well. It got like, I think your metric is it got over 1,000 views.
Yep.
Then you're like, hey, that's a good one.
Yep.
Most people, they're like, dude, I want like 20,000 or 1,000,000 views. And you're like, dude, that's not like what you're looking for.
Right.
So the other thing is like trending audio. I would say if it's under 1,000 like uses, that's a good audio to use. So
like hit that.
Yeah. And my last piece is don't pay someone until you know what you're doing.
Yeah.
Because I've paid a couple of times for like different hooks.
Okay.
So I like went online and I paid $50 to get like all these different hooks.
Yeah,
but they're
like
not
a list of them.
Yeah, a list of them.
Yep.
Wasn't geared to real estate at all. And then you have to like kind of change them.
Yeah.
But if you're going to hire someone to just do like your content for you, it's not going to work because they're going to need videos from you to show like if you want a personal brand or if you want to do like city brands.
Gotcha.
And then you're going to have to work with the photographers and like the editors and everyone.
Yeah.
So like you really actually got to understand the craft before you're like, I'm going to hire this out.
Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah.
Now one of the things I like doing, we kind of talked about this a little bit, but one of the things I like doing is having a guest on and give the one thing. If like we had this big conversation, right? We got these cameras going. We had this big conversation. If somebody's watching this, they don't get anything else from this whole episode. Okay. What's one thing that they can take away that you would like to share?
I would say zig where everyone is zagging from.
I like that.
Yeah. Like I heard it. And it's not my thought process, but I heard it. I actually heard it on a podcast. So not a book, but a podcast. Yeah. And you can just find holes in the market where you're like, that's my niche.
Yep.
I need a zig to that. And just kind of like and you might not get like calls back or like my book, right? I'm writing sent out manuscripts to all these different like people to get endorsements from.
Yeah.
No one is like getting back to me. But you got to just realize like, hey, no one is doing this. It has to work sometime.
Yep.
And it's all just about like grinding it out to get there.
Creating awareness around it.
For sure. Yeah. So zig where everyone is zagging to.
Love that. I love that. Well, this has been a great conversation, man. I love what you're doing online and the video content that you're making. And I'm excited to see it grow. So, well, this has been a great conversation. Thanks so much for being on the show.
Yeah, it's been great. I appreciate you having me on and being able to like pick my brain. I didn't realize how much like I actually knew. And then you sent me the questions. I was like, whoa, okay.
Yeah, that worked out. I mean, that was fantastic information. So I think a lot of people are going to get a lot of value from this particular success story. So thanks so much for being on, man.
Hey, thanks, Caleb.
All right. See you around town, probably.
Yeah, for sure. Queen City.
Queen City.